This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Sunday, May 12th. The Cubs in extra innings on Mother's Day send us all home happy, Brendan. They take 2 out of 3 in Pittsburgh. It was a grind. They were battling the BABIP gods on Sunday, but they get it done in extra innings. And they take 2 of 3 from Pittsburgh. The Cubs currently sitting at 24-17, just a half game behind the Milwaukee Brewers for first place in the NL Central. All things considered, Brendan, with now Dansby's on the IL, everybody's been hurt. They're plugging along, man.
Every time we do a show on Sunday, I look at the record, I see we're right near first place, and I ask the question, how is this happening? How are the Cubs doing this well, despite the majority of the team having been injured or currently injured?
Yes.
Insane.
They got a lot of, I don't know, grit, heart. They're gutting them out.
Is it all correct counsel? Is it all correct counsel?
I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe it is.
Maybe.
But it's good to see you. It's good to see your face.
Appreciate you guys stepping in for me. But I'm back. And yeah, we've got a big week of Cubs baseball to talk about. Cubs head to Atlanta on Monday, so a tough series coming up. Kind of a nice test for one Shota Imanaga as he sits near the top of Major League Baseball's ERA leaderboard against a tough offense. But looking back at this past week, I mean, there is a ton to talk about. Obviously, in this show, I think some of the things we're going to highlight, definitely Christopher Morel, and specifically what he's doing at the plate. And he's a guy that we've talked about a ton over the last couple of years, certainly this offseason, and mostly, I think, focusing so much on the defense. And he had a forgettable game this weekend in Pittsburgh, but largely has been, I think, fine at the hot corner. But specifically the offense and what we're seeing, a lot of us believe in him big time, but really what he's been doing lately, Brendan, even it should have you dreaming maybe even bigger than before. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Patrick Wisdom's role. I see the chat talking about that. If you're live, hop in the YouTube chat. Let us know what you're thinking. Drop some questions, comments, etc. If you're listening on your podcast feeds, hello. We appreciate you as always. We want to talk about Patrick Wisdom, his role, how Craig Counsell's used him, and how that has certainly been successful thus far. It was certainly successful on Sunday as he has a big homer in extra innings to provide some insurance runs for this Cubs pitching staff. We'll talk about the return of Kyle Hendricks, a nice start on Sunday. It was against Pittsburgh, only 5 innings. He did walk some guys, but I know you are chomping at the bit to maybe remind some people that
you've attached my name to the Kyle Hendricks discourse unfairly, but I understand.
You got pretty hot and bothered about it when we
talked about it. It was Cody's fault. Cody
Yeah.
comes on this podcast. He gets me riled up.
Well, but for now, it's better. We will talk about the bullpen. I already see some discussion of Adbert ALLCITY, who gets away with it on Sunday. He got away with it the other day as well, but a ton of hard contact, and it just does not look sustainable. Kind of the same as Hector Neris.
The entire bullpen.
The rest of the Cubs pitching staff is apparently calling Heart Attack Hector, something like that. I heard it on the broadcast today, but that's what it is. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how Craig Counsell is managing this pitching staff. Justin Steele, some rough 0-2 pitches this weekend, but I think otherwise, he'll settle in nicely soon. Plenty to talk about. But Brendan, I really would, I think, like to start talking about Christopher Morel. I think generally you and I have talked a lot. I don't want to lose focus, right? And that's why I started the podcast this way. But 24-17, this team has dealt with so many injuries. Now Dansby Swanson's on the injured list. They did that thing that we all love where they let a guy play through an injury for a couple weeks and then they go, you know what? He's hurt.
I can't keep doing that.
I pulled up in our CHGO Cubs chat the article from ESPN about Ben Zobrist.
Ben Zobrist one? Yeah, I saw that.
And just the line of it's been bothering him for months. And
right. Did he stop switch hitting during that time period? I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
Insane that happened.
Left-handed. That's how bad his wrist was.
Unbelievable.
He just let him power through it. Anyway.
Unbelievable.
we're doing it again. But now Tyone, a resurfacing of the back stuff, hopefully not a big deal, but he's still dealing with stuff. The Cubs have had so many injuries, 24-17. They sit almost at the top of the National League Central. And I feel like, Brendan, more as I kind of pull back on things, and I do want to get into Christopher Morel. It's not only remarkable that they're at this place, but I think you have to feel really confident. It's not super easy to just snap your fingers and address bullpen issues. You have to give up assets for that. It's only May, so competing teams are certainly not going to be super interested in making a big trade right now. Even teams that feel out of it, it's early May. They may not want to
Yeah.
do stuff like that just yet. So you can't just snap your fingers and fix these things, but you look at this team and you're like, all right, they've dealt with a bunch of injuries. Their starting pitching depth looks unbelievable. You kind of know what this team might need to take that next step. It's tough not to feel really good about where this team is right now.
We are lucky because we get to have a bird's eye view doing a show once a week. Looking at a game to game basis, the way they win the games with the drama and the bullpen volatility on a day to day basis, it seems quite unpredictable. But stepping back, looking at the big picture, the lineup growth with Morel, Bush, the depth they have from the positional group, even though they have been struggling, but the starting pitching growth as well in Assad and Shota being one of the best pitchers in the league, it does leave you with an overall good feeling of this team's standing. Now, the bullpen volatility, some of the injury concerns that we're seeing, Justin Steele coming back and giving up 3 home runs on Saturday. Those are issues we can talk about. But as I started the show, because they're 7 games above 500, because they came back in Pittsburgh and won 2 out of 3 in a series that you could easily look back on and think, okay, well, they were swept coming off a series against San Diego at Wrigley with poor weather. It could have been a bad week, yet they stay afloat. They're half a game back of Milwaukee as we enter Monday morning, and the situation could be so much worse. You get back healthy, as we'll talk about Morel and the rest of the lineup. You supplement him with a healthy Seiya, with a healthy Bellinger. You get Tyone back with his back issues and Shota continuing to do well and Steele back on track. It's very easy to see this team clicking in the
Right.
immediate future, and that's what gives me confidence.
I think I mention him all the time because he's just a great follow, and I love talking Cubs baseball with him. But Matt Clapp on Twitter, if you've listened for a while, I'm sure
Do
you
you
could
like
have guessed
Matt
who that
better
was
than
going to
me?
be.
I feel like you do.
No,
Oh,
no, but
wow. I'm surprised to hear
I've
that.
never talked with him daily. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I would. I don't know. At the blog finds on Twitter, he's a great follow, great Cubs fan. Um, he was talking. He made a point about how with this team, it's easy to see the ceiling when you
Yeah.
can see what this team looks like and how they would be successful if everything was clicking. Now, a a lot of teams can say that, and it's very hard to get everything clicking. But I think, even last year or in years past, as we've been going through this not a rebuild process, that hasn't been as easy to see. And suggesting that everything would click for this team was kind of a like that's asking a lot. And even if it is, are they better than all these other National League teams? This team, like you can see it. You see how this would all come together, and this would be a really solid team. Now, are they on the level of a team like the Braves or the Dodgers? No, but you don't need to be in a 5 or 7 game series in the playoffs. You just need to be better than them for 3 or 4
But the
days at a
standard
time.
should be that you are with
Sure, but
those
they're
teams,
building to that. But I
hopefully.
just liked the point from Matt that I think in years past, it was a little more difficult to see what does that ceiling look like? Is this team capable of reaching that ceiling? Is it feasible for them to do? And I think you look at this 2024 Cubs team with how they've endured the injuries and how you see the kind of areas that they need to improve in. It's easy to see like, yeah, this team can get rolling. I can envision it. I can see it.
You can see the win projection going a little bit more north. You enter the season at 84, 85, 86, depending on which system you're using. But you can see because Morel has pushed his projection forward. Bush has shown some stability, even though I'm sure we'll get into his trends, but generally higher than expected offensive production
Yeah.
because you have Shota doing well. All of that means that the expectation of winning more than 85, 86, it becomes more confidence. And as a result, it gives the front office more incentive to make those trades, maybe even in late May, June for bullpen help because they do need some type of stability in that
Yeah.
pen. It does give them more incentive because a lot of these young pre-arb guys are pushing forward those win projections. And to me, that's why I'm most confident.
Yeah. So I have seen it a bit. I do. Andy, I see you in the YouTube chat. Go Blue.
Yeah, I
I
was
see
waiting
that.
for
I know
that.
Brendan
I was
doesn't
waiting
like
for that.
that, but
I don't mind Michigan. I really don't. I like their jerseys.
I want to talk about Christopher Morel. And specifically what he's doing. So obviously, we see the homers. He hits another on Sunday. He has a very nice weekend in Pittsburgh. But looking at his overall numbers, and I know you have some fancy new statistics. I hope everybody in the YouTube chat, and if you're listening on your podcast feed, you might want to at least check out the YouTube for the
Look
visuals
at that.
later.
Look at that tease.
But Brendan's got new toys to play
I
with.
do. I was
Statcast
busy
has
this week.
released some new metrics that they're checking in on, bat speed being one of them, and
Well,
Brendan
they
is very
broke my
excited about
pipeline.
it.
I was trying to make some graphs and downloading data, and I couldn't. I'm like, "What the hell is going on?" And I realized, "What is this? This is bat speed and bat length." And
Right.
then I started clicking like crazy, Corey. So we have new tools, new
Listen,
toys to play with.
nothing gets Brendan going like bat length. Let me tell you about that. I want to
Just
talk
throw some
about
charts.
Christopher Morel. I want to talk, but so I think that's going to be part of the discussion about Christopher
Yeah,
Morel. Obviously, he goes 2 for 4 with a home run on Sunday. But looking at his overall numbers, Brendan, and this is, of course, is coming out of a funk. Recently, his OPS had dipped below. He was in a real funk, moving all over the lineup. A lot of people freaking out about him, but he was hitting the ball hard. The patience was still there during that
yeah,
stretch. And now you look at his overall numbers, he seems to be kind of seeing the benefit of that. His overall numbers on the season, he's only hitting 228. But for Christopher Morel, he's not a guy that we're really going to be overly concerned about his batting average. 309 on base, 448 slug, 329 WOBA, 114 WRC plus. But where I'm really dialed in, Brendan, is the 11% walk rate and the 22% K rate. That's what I'm dialed in
exactly.
on. Christopher Morel, as we all know, is still a very young player. He's 24 years old, to be 25 in a couple months. He's one of those guys that you see him making these adjustments as time goes on. And the player that you're seeing with his exit velocity trends, you're going to talk about some of these bat speed things. You can see the vision of like, he's got to put it together. He's got to be consistent. He has to find a way to avoid those kind of big stretches where the K rate maybe is a little higher or it's just not clicking for him. But you see the potential as a hitter of this guy has absolute star potential. The underlying metrics support that. But more important than anything to me, Brendan, is that guys that have raw tools like him as a hitter
Yeah.
sometimes go different directions. They get hot for a year and then it all escapes them. Their K rate skyrockets. Their bad habits take over. Their bad
Mhm.
tendencies take over. Maybe they get a little complacent after having a little bit of success, whatever it might be.
The league adjusts, they can't adjust
Yes.
back.
Christopher Morel is going the opposite direction, the
Exactly.
positive direction. His
Exactly.
K rate is going down. His plate discipline is getting better. And what you're seeing is pitchers are now realizing a little bit, this is not a guy that is just going to chase a bunch of junk out of the zone. We have got to challenge him occasionally. And when you challenge Christopher Morel, he hits a 114-mile-an-hour piss missile out into the stands.
Yeah.
So again, he's going to have ebbs and flows like any player, but what you're seeing, I think, is him really putting together that kind of top percentile outcome for a player with his raw tools.
I asked Greg Haas of Northside Bound Was Christopher Morel's power output ever imagined? Not something that was expected, but imagined. And his response was sort of yes, sort of no. But Morel is one of those guys who has not been someone deserving of a confident projection, both in a good and bad way, if not everyone's expectations. The power growth in the past year and a half to 2 years has exceeded your expectations and my expectations. When he debuted, I always mention this, the fact that he took so many pitches and showed patience, to me, that signaled in my fan's brain that this is someone who may adjust at unpredictable rates in a good way. Now, this season, he's almost combining what we saw when he debuted in 2022, that patience, with the power he showcased last year. So you're seeing someone who has a patient approach, someone who's not striking out, to your point, and capitalizing on mistakes and leveraging this new power growth he's shown in the past year and a half. If you look at Morel's bat speed, which I just said was a new StatCast metric, I'm sure we'll learn more about this as more people, crunch all these numbers, but he has the fifth best bat speed in Major League Baseball, Corey. The fifth best in the tier of Stanton,
Good. I was gonna say, can
Judge,
you name some of the
Acuna,
guys he's
yeah,
in company with?
Schwarber. Those are the top five. He's number five among that group. Then the best trend for me and Morel this year is exactly what you mentioned. It's that strikeout rate and that whiff rate. If you look at just how Cubs players have gone through the ebbs and flows early on, one of the ways I track that subjectively is just how often are they swinging and missing the ball. And with Morel, I'm going to show a graph here.
Oh, yeah.
You're not seeing these high peaks and valleys. What you're seeing is like a very static progression throughout the season. For example, if you look at a graph here, every player is color coded. Okay. So the first name that pops up on this list, which we should talk about, Corey, is Michael Busch. Busch is experiencing recently in the past week a little bit more of a whiff trend. Now, if you go down on this list, third in line in light blue is Christopher Morel. And you're seeing Morel's blue line not deviate from the middle of the pack. He's staying within a 10 to 15% whiff rate or swinging strike rate. And that has not deviated, that's not rising. And in fact, recently is kind of just stabilizing out. And that's in the same tier as you've seen other guys within this season, including Dansby Swanson. He was going up to the moon in whiff rate last week. That tended to normalize prior to the injury, but he's hanging out in the same tier as you would expect veteran guys to hang out in. And that's what makes me encouraged, because for someone like Morel who has that power, the question always becomes, is the contact going to be good enough? Can he sustain that type of contact to make him an everyday player? Because if you can't, then you turn into more of a role player, which is fine, but that role player is what you get from someone like Patrick Wisdom. Again, valuable, but not the superstar potential guy we're seeing. The fact that we're seeing the contact, the power growth, the defensive competency growing at third base as a 24-year-old, it's not hyperbole to suggest that the ceiling actually is a superstar player. One of those guys that broke all the computers, that will look back on 5 years from now and be like, how the hell did we miss Morel when he was 19, 20, 21? He is turning into one of those players to have that potential. Of course, we need to see it throughout the next few months, but it's not unrealistic, and that should give everyone a ton of encouragement.
Yeah, and look, the third base stuff we talked about a lot. One of the games in Pittsburgh obviously wasn't very good, but I think generally he has looked better there by the eye test. I think he's looked more comfortable there, been better with some of the simpler plays, the
Yeah.
easier plays. And occasionally he makes a really nice play. And it's a work in progress. So it's going to be a work in progress. As
We have
we've
a lot of
said since the
comments about the
beginning.
bat speed stuff. Should I show the bat speed graph? I forgot to
Sure.
show it.
Yeah.
All right, I got to show the bat
The
speed graph.
people want
But
to see it.
the people want to see it. But to your point, though, about the defense, a little bit more of a rough weekend, but for 3 weeks prior to this weekend, he was fine,
Yeah,
making his simple
I agree.
plays, making some difficult plays.
Yeah.
So again, it's just the ebbs and flows. He's going to have to grow in his confidence with his defense. All right, bat speed graph, quick. I'll throw it back to you. This is what it looks like, folks. Okay, so we have on the bottom miles per hour bat speed. Typically, the best, from what I can tell early on, the best bat speed hitters are around 75 plus miles per hour. The number one guy right now, I believe, don't quote me on this, I want to say it's Stanton or Judge around like 70 or 79. Anyway, Morel right now, above 75. If you just kind of scale it by over 75, he's still top five, but he's in a different stratosphere. So Christopher Morel's number one. Patrick Wisdom right below him, around 72, 71. Miguel Amaya is up on this list, which I was surprised about. Seiya around 72 as well. Ian Happ right by him. Dansby a little bit lower. Cody a little bit lower. Nico around 68, 69. That's going to be in like the lower 20th percentile, but someone with Nico's contact to be expected. And then again, we'll talk about Bush, I think, but he's lower on this list. He's around 66 miles per hour. So I see Bush's whiff rate going up. I see his bat speed going lower than I expected. The power going down a little bit. My expectations are changing with Bush as a result. Nick Madrigal low on the list, last in basically every offensive category you can imagine. At some point, we have to talk about Nick Madrigal deserving a roster spot. I'll be quite honest with you, but that's what, because I know you want to talk about Nick Madrigal, but that should put the Christopher Morel extreme outcome in perspective. When you see stuff like that, where he's not just even close to the group, he's far in a different echelon, Corey. It's really encouraging to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we come back from our first ad break, I think we can talk about Kyle Hendricks, I suppose, and the start that was on Sunday. I think that was definitely an encouraging sign, especially given all the injuries the Cubs have had. But we will hit our first ad break, and then we will come back and talk about Kyle Hendricks, Patrick Wisdom. I promise we will talk about the bullpen, but Brendan and I aren't going to have any answers for you.
I can go pitch. My fastball's sick, man. I got 23 inches of vertical brick. I've been saying that. All right, quick ad break here. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. They probably have a style in your favorite team's colors. You want some blue shades? Well, Shady Rays has those for you. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com. Use code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Penrose Brewing, Geneva, Illinois. Seltz Up, hard seltzers with real fruit, led by Lemon Seltz Up, a national gold medal winning hard seltzer with real lemons. We created our unique twist on a lemon shake-up with a house-made hard seltzer and pureed lemons for a throwback to warm weather and county fairs. Just released this year is also the Transfusion Seltz Up, inspired by a popular golf cocktail with grape, ginger, and lime. That sounds pretty good too. Penrose is available at your local beverage retailer or visit Penrose's taproom in Geneva. For more information, go to penrosebrewing.com or follow them on social media at Penrose Brewing.
All right, Brendan, since we were talking some of the exit velo stuff, let's stay with the hitters and let's just talk about Patrick Wisdom. And I think, he obviously has not, been playing the entire season. At this point, he's only got 34 plate appearances on the year, but I like the way that Craig Counsell is using him. And it's one of those things where not everything needs to be like, how did David Ross do this? How did Craig Counsell do this? But I think one of the things that I like about Counsell is I feel a little more trusting that he's going to use someone like Patrick Wisdom a little more deliberately than I would think. Well, I know David Ross did. Now, again, that's nuanced, and we don't have to talk about David Ross, who is a World Series champion with the Chicago Cubs. That's the last thing we'll say.
Which year was that again?
2016. It looks like you have a flag, maybe a pennant behind you.
No. So you can't really tell, but it says 2016 Chicago Cubs right there. World Series. I can't do this. My brain's all messed up. World Series champions right there. Yeah. Cool. In case you can tell.
Yeah, that's great. People forget that.
People do.
So what I like about Wisdom is that, he's a guy, I know Cody was tweeting about it earlier this afternoon that, at least on this podcast, I'm sure others and in other writing, they've talked about how Wisdom is a guy who's going to frustrate some fans, right? The K rate's high, the average is low, and he's just not the type of guy that everyone is going to love when he comes to the plate. But he is very valuable to a baseball team if
Yes.
you can use him in a certain role. As a guy that has to start every day, maybe that's not the best outcome, right? But as someone who you can use to say, hey, the offense has scuffled a little bit. At times they've had trouble putting rallies together or putting crooked numbers up on the board. You know who might run into one and just at least get you on the board? Patrick Wisdom. You know who's a good guy who can mash certain types of pitching and get you some slug when you really need it? Patrick Wisdom. And that seems to be how he's being used by Craig Counsell. Again, it's 34 plate appearances, but right now he's got a 212 WRC plus, Brendan. That's
That
pretty
will
good.
work. That will
That'll work.
work.
That dog will hunt. Let me tell you something right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
He's already hit a couple homers on the year. K rate's sitting at about 20%. Walk rate's at about 18%. Again, it's a very small sample, but that's kind of how I expect him to be used. I think Craig is looking more at this saying like, listen, we know what he's going to be if we play him every day. We try to have him go against righties, lefties, guys that throw hard, guys that throw heavy breaking stuff. It's going to be inconsistent. But what if we pick our battles a little more specifically and send him out there just to do damage? Don't expect him to be this good all the time. But yeah, like as a bench bat, as a guy that plays somewhat sporadically, he's a good guy to have, especially during these periods where Ian Happ, had a better weekend in Pittsburgh, as he always does. If only they could play the old division setup would be much more beneficial
I
to.
like the old division setup better. I thought I wouldn't. I
Well,
actually
that
do.
we don't have time to get into that,
Yeah,
but
I know.
he had a better weekend. But like while he's not slugging, Dansby's out for a while. Of course, you had Seiya out, Cody out. They're back, but a guy like Patrick Wisdom who can slug a little bit and run into one is a valuable piece to have on the bench, and he's certainly being utilized that way so far.
I was surprised to see his splits last year. Against righties, he actually outperformed against lefties. He had a 340 WOBA against righties last year and a 323 WOBA against lefties. I thought it would be reverse, to be honest with you, with my memory. The way that Counsell is going to use him, I expect is going to be exactly what we saw this past week against righties that are best used against wisdom strengths against lefties when the alternative for a lefty for the Cubs lineup is not the best option. That's where I see Counsell being the perfect guy for these types of decisions. The frustration with wisdom over the years, I think from the fans' perspective, is that he was the main guy. He was playing every single day.
Sure.
He was the bridge between the trade of the core to what we're seeing now. And he's an older guy. So the Christopher Morels that we had hoped to see in 2022 or 2021 after the core was traded, they weren't there. And we got Patrick Wisdom. Taking a step back and seeing what he's done, this is someone in a role that is valuable. Not saying it's play him every single day. Role player. His career weighted on base average is 330. Career WRC plus 109. Last year in sparing playing time, 300 plate appearances, a 109 WRC plus. And to a lot of people's displeasure, I understand the whiffs, I get all of that, but when that may not get certain whiffs because wisdom's strengths are against certain pitch types, that max effort power that he has comes incredibly valuable. And that's we're not going to get into it, but that's why, from my perspective, when looking at let's say someone like Mastroboni or Nick Madrigal, when I look down in the farm and I see Jake Slaughter or I see Luis Vasquez, the reason I rather go with those two guys than Mastroboni and Madrigal right now is because the lineup needs some type of pop in the current form. And Madrigal's not going to do that. Mastroboni's not going to do that. Vasquez, his growth and power has gone up, similar to Jake Slaughter's. In the current going, I want to leverage high extreme power guys to boost this lineup.
Yeah.
And with Patrick Wisdom showing that right now, giving Counsell another opportunity, another depth piece when guys are injured, it's valuable. And I expect him to be used exactly like we've seen in the past week and a half.
Yeah, and I saw Tyler in the YouTube chat saying it earlier. Like, I agree. I don't necessarily think he should be in there every day. I think you do have to pick some battles, but especially while the team was struggling to score runs, like I would much rather he be out there than a guy like Madrigal or Mastroboni. Now, part of that is just because Nick Madrigal sucks, but
Does
it's
he?
more. I don't have any qualms saying that. His OPS is hovering around 500. Like, if people want to get mad at me for saying that, sorry. Like, I don't really care
I
anymore.
don't think you've ever said that on this podcast.
I'm tired of it, dude.
I can tell, man. Good for
But
you. Speak your
but
mind.
but really though, like when you're looking at it just even from a skill set or hypothetical skill set standpoint, like this team right now doesn't need the contact and the station to station type stuff. They need
Right.
slug. Like there's too
Right.
many games where they just don't have any oomph in the lineup. And now Saya's back. Hopefully he gets going. He had a very unlucky day on Sunday. He was ripping the ball all day on Sunday, nothing to show for it. But
Yeah.
he looks locked in. He's going to be that middle of the order hitter or hitting 2, whatever it is. He's going to be one of their main producers. Cody's back. He looks really good at the plate. So hopefully we're kind of getting away from that. But there was that long stretch where it was like, man, like I get the logic and I know kind of what their thinking is, but the sort of the contact heavy stuff and just putting the ball in play is just not what at times over this year, last year, and certainly in years past, that has been something that this team lacked. Just somebody to put the ball in play, get the ball on the ground to bring a runner home from third or anything like that. But this offense during this stretch, like I would rather if Patrick Wisdom can go 1 for 5 with a big double or a home run, I think that's what this team really needs while Ian Happ is still trying to figure stuff out at the plate, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see how they do it going forward. But I wanted to talk about Wisdom just to highlight. I really like the way Craig Counsell has used him. And I think it highlights how you really can, even if a player is imperfect and not someone who you necessarily would earmark for 162 games, they can still have a lot of value if they're used correctly and not put in situations that they're just not that player. You can't ask them to be that player.
Madrigal, Mastroboni both have been below replacement level. And the way that they are valuable is used in situations where they're not exposed offensively. So for
Yeah.
them to be above replacement means fewer plate appearances, maximize defensive versatility. When the Cubs lineup is struggling, that defensive versatility holds limited value
Yeah.
because you're exposing them to pitchers who are going to get them out. They create more outs than they save outs. So right now, it's not a good fit. Maybe in 3 months, August, team is healthy. Say is performing well. Bellinger's back healthy. Everyone's clicking. Ian Happ is back and looking like his normal self. Different conversation. But in the middle of May right now, I want to push those boundaries. I want those guys getting at bats who have the capacity to hit home runs off of Aroldis Chapman in extra innings when you need that run, especially with the bullpen that is hit or miss. And Patrick Wisdom absolutely provides that value. Let's
Yeah.
hit our second ad break here. We'll come back
Well, and so
around.
I was just going to say for anybody in 2019, John Lester put up a
Oh,
46 WRC plus. Nick
here we
Madrigal is
go.
currently at 49. You can
I
do
could,
whatever you want with that information.
I knew I could tell your eyes were going back and forth. I'm like, oh, he's doing something over there. I knew
That's all
that's
I'm
what
going
it
to say.
was. In the
That's all
back
I'm
of
going
my
to
mind,
say.
I knew
You
that
can
was
put
going
whatever
on.
context around that you want. And yes, I see him in the chat. We should credit to Cody for willing a career effort from Miles Mastrobuoni on Saturday to help spoil the debut of Paul Skeens. Although
Yeah.
if you listen to the national media, it was the best debut anybody's ever made. But I believe I saw it somewhere. I can't remember who to credit for this, but I believe he has a 6.75 ERA. So
Yeah, that's what the stats are. I gotta say, slugging Nico Horner went yard off him too. So just
yes.
saying, talking
Now
about
I had
power over
Nico
here.
and who you got on
I know
Saturday,
you
so
do.
I take credit to that. Credit to
You do.
me for that. We're gonna hit our second ad break here. When we come back, I do want to talk about Kyle Hendricks, dig into what we saw on Sunday, and then yes, I promise we will talk about the bullpen. I see all of the comments in the YouTube chat about ALLCITY. What do we do with ALLCITY? What should we do with Hector Neris? Love Lady, the whole thing. We will talk about it.
That's all
Like I said,
intertwined with
though,
Hendricks too. It's all intertwined.
yes, of course. So we will talk about that in just a second, but we need to pay the bills real quick.
Some beers can say they're brewed for baseball, but only Blue Moon is brewed by baseball. Beer and baseball just go together, and no beer goes better than the one that was literally born in a ballpark. Imagine it's a beautiful July afternoon. The sun is out in Chicago. Cubs are 20 games above 500, clearly in first place. And you pour a blue moon with an orange garnish. Cannot have a better afternoon. Why strike out with the same old beer when you can get something one of a kind? Is bold flavor, bright explosion of color, an iconic orange slice. Ritual guarantee a one-of-a-kind beer experience perfect for spring weather. Bring the ballpark to you with Blue Moon. Belgian-style wheat ale is one of a kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO to see your delivery options. That's get.bluemoon.com/CHGO. Blue Moon, made brighter. Celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Baseball season underway. You want to make, I know I was about to sing the song, but you don't want to hear me sing, by the way, but you want to make some money. You feel good about Nico Horner going yard off supposedly the best pitcher in professional baseball. You think Morel's going to continue to go yard? Got news for you. You can use Prize Picks, put up those projections and make money off that. You want to see Nico and Morel go yard against the Braves upcoming? Well, you can bet those two on Prize Picks. I made my first $10 deposit and received an instant $10 bonus. If you have the skills, you can play for a shot at turning your $10 into $1,000. Go to prizepicks.com/CHGO. Use code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CHGO. Use code CHGO. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Prize Picks.
All right, Brendan, before we jump into Kyle Hendricks, we do have a super chat from Mr. Cub _DB Swanson 7, which I sort of thought that might be your burner. So if you're
Maybe
giving
it
us a
is.
super chat, that's nice. We appreciate that very much, Mr. Cub DB Swanson 7. He says,
maybe it's actually
they
Dansby.
say, let's all just take a minute to thank Corey and Brendan for taking time to close out the weekend during baseball season. Thank you. Go Cubs. God bless. We appreciate that super chat very much. Appreciate y'all in the chat and for joining us on these Sundays to talk about Chicago Cubs baseball. Let's talk about Kyle Hendricks, Brendan. It was, there was some confusion as to whether he was going to start or he was going to make another start in AAA. But obviously, Tyone, a little flare up of the back stuff. They say it's not a big deal, but of course, I know you're worried about it. You're going to be worried about it for the rest of the year.
That's a fair thing to be worried about.
It is, but I know you
yeah.
And especially for how good Tyone has looked since coming back. That's, not
well, you
necessarily.
make it sound like I'm crazy to be worried about that. It's a fair thing to worry about. He's got chronic back issues. I got 2 pillows behind my back right now because my back hurts. I know how it is.
See? Anyway, Kyle Hendricks on Sunday, 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts, gives up the lone home run. Altogether, I thought it was a nice outing for him. I mean, certainly, gets taken deep on the home run, but such is life. He gave up a hard one to Cruz, but those things happen. If you can limit it to solo shots, then that's fine. That's a better way to live. The 4 walks, a high total, but I think, perhaps opting for trying not to put the ball over the middle of the plate and sacrificing maybe a little bit of the walk total for that. But limiting the hits, limiting the damage, got through 5 innings and gave this team, a start that they needed, just given everything going on. 94 pitches. I thought he looked pretty good. The Pirates offense is not good. So obviously you need to see more of this from Kyle Hendricks as we go forward. But at the end of the day, with how many injuries this team has had and dealt with, Justin Steele still obviously working back from his injury, and he's going to need to kind of get back up to speed and everything. I think this is the type of start that they needed from Kyle Hendricks. You can parse through the numbers and we can talk about what we expect from him going forward. But I think for him to be able to keep the team in the game, help them win on the road and win a series, I think that's what they needed from him in this moment. Bad offense that he's facing or not, he did the job on Sunday.
It was surprising to see him called up. I knew Tyone was going to get pushed back. I was still surprised when they announced on Friday that he was going to try to pitch this weekend. I thought that was obviously not the smartest thing. I was surprised Hendricks was the one taking the start because he was announced to continue his rehab this week. So that was, I guess, a pleasant surprise if you think Kyle can provide immediate value? He's been a hot topic all season. Calls to DFA him have been made by fans. I understand the frustration. Right now, the Cubs need arms. Clearly, their bullpen is going through a worst case scenario thing right now with that bullpen. As Craig would say, to be frank.
Yeah.
So they need arms. And Kyle is an arm with a recent track record of last September being valuable. When I watched Kyle and when I looked at him today against Pittsburgh, the number one thing I looked for was sinker command. The changeup command prior to his Phantom IL stand was fine. The tailing low changeup to left-handed batters that he uses was fine. The cutting changeup may not have been his best, may have been needing better command at times, but generally that was fine. So today I'm looking at sinker command. And I'm looking at how often is he hitting the edges with his sinker. So here's his spray map of his pitches today against Pittsburgh. The orange dots here are his sinkers. Now just move your eyes around the black portion of the strike zone. You're seeing a lot of sinkers around the black edges of the zone. You're not seeing many sinkers towards the middle of the zone. That's what you want to see from Kyle. The more times he hangs out on the edges, the better chances he has for weak contact. Craig Counsell was interviewed after the game. He said, quote, he saw a lot of weak contact that was familiar. That is what we are familiar to seeing as well over the past decade with Kyle. If he can go out there and do what he did today, even if he's going to walk more guys than we are comfortable seeing at times, the strikeouts, the changeup effectiveness to lefties and righties, and most importantly, the sinker command against the edges is likely to provide at least average value. All I'm asking for is average value from Kyle, maybe every fifth day. Might be too much to ask for right now as he's going through this growing pain. But if he can look like he did against Pittsburgh every fifth day, then I'm going to feel a lot better about this stuff.
Yeah, look, again, we'll see what happens. Obviously, the first few starts were not good. Did look pretty good in those minor league starts and good enough on Sunday against Pittsburgh. So I think for that one, with our friends at Shady Rays, we're going to put on our rose-colored glasses and hope that the future is bright for the rest of this season for Kyle Hendricks. And as a reminder, if you head to shadyrays.com and use our code CHGO, at checkout, you can get 35% off polarized sunglasses. That's shadyrays.com. So
how do you feel about Kyle, though?
Well, so what I was going to say is I think at this moment, if everybody were healthy and everybody were pitching as well as they could, I think the conversation would be very interesting and very, very different. At this moment, while we're, you want to give Tyone the proper time to deal with his back, even if it's fine and he's going to start again, in Atlanta or whatever, you don't want to rush these things. The same with Justin Steele. You didn't want to rush him back. You want to let him take that time and be healthy.
Yeah.
The young guys, you want to make sure that they're given the proper time to grow as young pitchers in Major League Baseball, not necessarily adapting only to the needs of the 2024 Chicago Cubs. So if Kyle Hendricks can give you outings like this, even if they're just 5 innings to keep the team in the ball game and give the offense a chance to win, it allows us in the short term to see things like we did on Friday, which I also want to talk to you about, which was 3 2/3 innings of 2-hit baseball and 6 strikeouts from one Ben Brown, who had been hit or miss in his opportunities as a starter, which, of course, he's a young guy getting his first opportunity in that role. He picked up his first win on Friday night. I know, you don't care about pitcher wins, whatever, but that's cool for him. I'm glad he got that. He deserved it in that game.
If I were a pitcher, I care about wins.
Yeah, for now, if Kyle can make more starts like this, that's what it allows you to do. So, and I know you said it was intertwined with the bullpen, and this is how. How you move these guys around is going to be up to Counsell, and each of these people, all of us, the front office, Craig, you, me, everybody in the chat might have a different opinion of who should be the guys getting the starting spots, who should be the guys that maybe we try as longer relief guys in the bullpen. We're all going to probably disagree on that. But the more options you have that can just give you a quality start or something resembling that, 6 innings, 3 runs, 5 innings, 3 or 4 runs, something like that, that allows them to move these guys around. What this team cannot afford is a bunch of guys that can go 3 innings and sometimes get rocked and sometimes don't, but it all eats at the bullpen anyway. So you can't ignore how Kyle started the season, but you talked a lot about how a lot of this stuff looked okay and pretty normal to past years,
Yeah.
and that there might be some value there. And if you can find it and you can get him to stabilize just a little bit, it gives you so much more flexibility with some of this other stuff. And like I said, it allows you to do things like you did on Friday with Ben Brown. It allows you to be flexible with someone like Hayden Wisniewski, who's been great during this last stretch. But the more flexibility, the better, Brendan.
The more arms available, the better. The more flexibility Council has to get the bullpen right in the form of resting guys. We can think of Keegan Thompson as one example of this concept. If starters can go deeper, 5 innings, 6 innings, 7 innings, if Kyle can provide an option for Craig to meet that 5, 6, 7 inning potential, well, then you can rest your bullpen guys. You don't have to use Keegan Thompson, to my earlier point, on back-to-back days where he struggled, where he's been used in his career as more of an every third or fifth guy. And Keegan's been struggling recently. It's really important right now for them to get Kyle right. And the fact that his changeup continues to look good, and then today we saw Hendricks showcase, no doubt about it, his best sinker command, made me feel really good, really encouraged. Of course, he needs to continue to show it and not revert back to whatever the problem was facing him in his first 4 weeks of the season. But this bullpen, this staff needs innings. Ben Brown is another great point of this concept because Ben Brown, if he was envisioned by the coaching staff and the front office as, a bona fide starter from day one, well, he may not have been used in this multi-inning role right now. And the way things are going right now, with Wisniewski looking good and Assad continuing to provide deep innings, Ben Brown may be one of those late inning guys. We've talked about this now for 4 or 5 weeks. Ben Brown is essentially Julian Merriweather 2.0 in the way I think about him. Slightly different pitch types, but the similarity is that they negate platoon splits, which means they are capable of handling diverse lineups because of that curveball. That curveball is north to south. Merriweather had a north to south slider that was very fast, and they're both tall. They both have good carry on their four seams. They're very similar pitchers. The more innings we get from Kyle, the better the chance we have Ben Brown maximizing his value. The more chances Craig can get that bullpen right.
All right, I have a question for you. But before that, looks like we got a little over 200 people watching. If you wouldn't mind
Hello.
hitting that thumbs up, that like button, we appreciate you being here. Show us a little love.
You can see
That's it.
my sunburned face. I don't know if you
We
can tell.
appreciate it. So let's tie this in with Hector Neris, Adbert Alzolay, the closer situation, all of this. So you look at Hector Neris's numbers. He's got a 3 ERA. He's picked up some wins because he
It's unreal, dude. I don't know how he does this.
but, um, a 5.3 FIP. If you're into the expected stats, a 5.7
You
expected
love the
FIP.
expected stats. That's your
Whatever
thing.
you want to do with the stats, that is not good. He's
No.
walking way too many guys. He's giving up way too much contact. He's not getting enough whiffs, yada, yada, yada. It is not a sustainable
It's crazy.
model. I know, like, in the past, like, there's always those closers that, like, kind of give you heartburn because they put guys on, but they seem to just wiggle their way out of it. He is not going to keep wiggling his way out of it at this rate. You just need to see better command from him. Like
Yeah.
the lack of whiffs and the amount of walks is just horribly unsustainable. I mean, he has a walk per 9 right now that's over 8.
Nuts.
Brendan, I don't even know if I've ever
Nuts.
seen a number that high.
Nuts.
So that's not going to work. Alzolay, way too much hard contact. You've talked, and I think you've tweeted, you may have written with Ryan, I don't know, about the shape of his breaking stuff just is
Well,
not
you
the
you
same.
don't you don't read my stuff? Is that what you were saying?
I hear you on the podcast. I'm talking about
Sometimes
it. How would I
sometimes you
know
do.
about it if I don't pay attention to it?
I hear you.
The breaking stuff, the slider, it's not moving the same. It doesn't have the same bite. it is not the same pitch as he was successful with last year. And you saw it again on Sunday. And even the games that Alzolay is getting out of things, he's giving up a ton of hard contact. Today, he gets out of it, but he gives up a home run to Connor Joe, 109.4 off the bat. And then the line out to end the game from Michael Taylor, 102 off the bat. Even the fly out and the force out to Grandal and Triolo, high 80s miles per hour, the little bit of red if you're looking on Baseball Savant. The point being, he's getting hit. And some of the games he's getting away with it because the lead is enough, just barely enough. But similar to Neris, it just is not going to work. Now, the problem with Alzolay, he is out of options. So I spoke on this a couple weeks ago in the studio, was looking at FanGraphs that said that he did have an option, but it's one of those tricky contract things with, how many games he's pitched, things like that. He does not have any options. So the Cubs cannot just send him down. They could try the Phantom IL thing, but you can't just do that for every player that you want. Although that's probably what the Dodgers do. So I'm sure there's a way to get away with it without Major League Baseball
I'm
asking
sure
any
they can
questions.
figure it out.
Yeah. But either way, he has got to figure out how to fix those pitches. And as we talked about with Jamison Tyone last year, that's very difficult to do in the middle of the season when you are trying to get major league hitters out. Even if it's not a save opportunity, it's still difficult to be making those adjustments. But either way, you've got two options in those guys that need to change things because what they're doing is not going to continue to work. As for what they do with Alzolay, Brendan, I don't know what the
I have
solution
no
is.
idea.
The solution is,
No
like I
idea.
said, a Phantom IL stint. You can ask him nicely to accept an option assignment. That is something that you can do, but he would have to accept that, which I don't know what his feeling on that would be. Otherwise, those are your options. I know that there's going to be folks that, maybe are quick to DFA him. He's done. That is also not an
You need
option, at least for
arms.
me, Brendan.
Need
That's
arms.
crazy. He was one of the best. He was a top, 30 reliever in baseball last year. And even if you and I have never really necessarily believed in him as a true closer for a team that is about to win the World Series because he doesn't get enough whiffs, but he's still a very valuable
He
bullpen
was an
piece.
above average, one of the
Yeah.
better
So
value relievers.
you have to exhaust everything you have available to you before we would ever think of cutting bait like that. He was way too successful last year for that to be on the table right now. But without any options, the Cubs' options are limited as for how to fix this. So wrapping it all around, with those situations being what they are, Neris is
Not good.
walking everybody in the world right now. Alzolay's getting hit way too hard. Do you think that a guy like Ben Brown, because that's the natural reaction to what we saw on Friday, why not try him as the closer? Do you think that that's a route that they should explore, or do you think that him going max effort for 2 to 3 innings, say, given the way this pitching staff is structured, is going to be the most valuable output for this team?
It's a tricky balance because although Ben Brown is used out of the bullpen, he's being used in 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 inning spurts. That development seems to be a priority for the Cubs. I imagine that development is a priority because there's still some question marks towards the back end of the rotation, despite having Assad look good, despite Wisniewski performing well. They may want to keep the option open where Ben Brown needs to start for the Cubs at some point this season. If you put him in a max effort role, then there's a possibility you take that option away where you might need that in July and August. If this were August or September, and you have more confidence in Assad and Wisniewski and Kyle and Wicks is healthy, then my answer would be absolutely yes. Ben Brown is now my 7th, 8th, 9th inning guy, given what we've seen and given what we've seen, not from him, but also from the other guys in the bullpen. So in May, no, I don't think Ben Brown being a max effort, 1 inning guy is obvious the best decision for it. I think it's something to talk about and it's not crazy to think about, but this team needs innings in some capacity. So then the question becomes, well, if you're not going to use Ben Brown, there's literally no one you can use at this point. You have a Leiter. He's being used in the fireman role, 1, 2 innings at a time, bridging 8th and 9th innings. We saw that even today in Sunday's game series-ending performance. It's there's no right answer here is the problem, and it almost seems to be that the only answer is a trade in some capacity. If you want to dive into the specifics of what we need to see, the specifics for ALLCITY is the slider shape. It's similar to how we talk about Kyle Hendricks and dialing in on that command with the sinker. For ALLCITY, it's the slider shape. You can go to Baseball Savant. If you see sliders thrown with like 2-3 inches of horizontal break at 90 miles per hour, well, that's a good sign. The fact is, we're not seeing that this year. And ALLCITY has said to the media, he knows for a fact his pitches are not moving
Yeah.
as they were moving. So until I see that, I don't really care about the results, even if they're positive, because I need to see ALLCITY get outs the same way he got outs last year. If he doesn't change that slider, then you're going to see the same results. You will see more home runs and you will see hard contact. Until you see that slider shape return to how it was, this is who he is. And it is potentially a AAA arm right now until he fixes that slider.
Yeah. So I want to look back at Friday just to illustrate the point of like getting away with it, but the hard contact. While I'm doing that, if you're in the live YouTube chat, drop in the comments who do you the Cubs play the Braves tomorrow. They're up 3-2 in the bottom of the 9th inning. Acuna's coming up, Albies is coming up, Austin Riley's coming up. Who are you calling to close that game? Drop it in the comments and we'll look through some of those. And I'll ask you, Brendan, in a second who you're calling to close that game. But just to illustrate on ALLCITY specifically on Friday, I read the numbers from Sunday, but you look at a game like Friday, he gets 2 strikeouts in that game. He ends up getting out of it, doesn't give up any runs. The Cubs win the game, fly the W, pump the fist, sing the song, all of that. Now, how he got there, obviously the 2 strikeouts of Brian Reynolds and Michael Taylor, a double he gives up to Yasmani Grandal, 99 miles an hour off the bat. Then the other non-strikeout out in the inning is Ian Happ robbing a 105 mile an hour home run from Andrew McCutchen that he took back and brought it in. I did love the story, by the way, that they told, I think, on the broadcast. Ian Happ has told that he used to go to the games in Pittsburgh, sit in the upper deck to watch Andrew McCutchen. That's cool. That stuff is cool. Like robbing a home run off of a guy that you used to grow up and watch and like kind of want to be like. That's got to be very cool for Ian Happ. But I digress. The reason that I just sort of lay that out is, again, similar to Neris putting too many guys on base. That level of hard contact, that's back-to-back outings where almost every guy is hitting a ball at least 90 miles an hour and at least one person is hitting it at least 105 miles an hour off the bat.
Yeah.
He's getting
ripped.
He's getting ripped. That's just the plain and simple truth. And obviously, Craig is not using him as the closer. He's not using him in high leverage. On Friday, it was a 7-2 game. And then on Sunday, of course, you're in extra innings. You've used a bunch of guys. You really didn't have very many options on Sunday at that point in the game. So it's not that they're putting him in those situations, but as we go through the guys and you're like, well, this guy's struggling. Keegan really struggles when it's on, no rest or just 1 day's rest, things like that.
Exactly.
Your options start to go from like, oh, okay, there's this many guys in the bullpen to like, okay, wait, no, not him. It's tough. So I'm seeing a lot of, you were looking at it, I was talking, but I'm seeing a lot of Leiter is the guy that we're going to go to. So
who you throw? Who you throwing in the 7th or 8th?
Right. So that's the issue is the trickle down effect is that Mark Leiter Jr. For the last few years by Counsell and David Ross has been used very effectively as kind of a guy that is not necessarily the closer, but he's your first call in a sign of trouble. You get him out there, use that splitter, and he's been very effective for this team. And I will remind everybody that as far as I know, when he converted to being a relief pitcher, the CHGO Cubs podcast were the first people to tell people to relax and that he was actually very good as a relief pitcher. So he is a fan favorite of the CHGO Cubs podcast. Credit to us.
Good job.
I'm fine with that. But yeah, it does create the issue of, then that means Adbert or Neris or Keegan on not great rest, things like that, or Lovelady, who everybody in the chat seems to hate, things like that. That's who's coming out in the 7th inning. Now Almonte's on the IL. Jose Cuas up and down, but most of the chat and Twitter
Palencia on the
despises
IL.
him. Right,
Shoulder
Valencia on the
strain for
IL.
Palencia and Almonte.
So
Sucks.
it's tough. And, like you said, I think they're going to prioritize using a guy like Ben Brown for as long as he's in this bullpen role in those longer spots. You do have guys still in this rotation that are liable to make short starts, not necessarily go super deep in the game. And having a guy that can go 2-3 innings and do what you saw on Friday from Ben Brown, really, really valuable, like insanely valuable for where this team is. Noah says bring back Rizzo and put him in the pen.
I agree.
I'm not uninterested.
0.00
He has
ERA.
never given up an earned run.
Versus Skeens with a 6.675 ERA.
The
Who's
stats
better?
don't lie, Brendan.
Who's
Now that
better?
is vintage Delmetrics right there.
Yes.
But the stats don't lie. Either way, I think, look, at some point they're going to have to address the bullpen. It's a nice thought that you can do all of this internally. And I do like how many guys they've given opportunities to. We've seen more chances for some younger guys and guys to take an opportunity. But that being said, it's clear when I talked at the beginning that this team is 24-17. Things are going well despite all the injuries. And you can kind of see how it could come together for this team and what the ceiling might be. This is the main issue. The other one might be, okay, like, is the offense consistent enough? Can they put up those big numbers and get to really good pitching? But I think they've shown you that they can. And if you have Morel, Bellinger, Suzuki, Bush, and Ian Happ, where you kind of hope they can be, I think the offense can do enough, and I think they can be good enough. The issue for this team is the bullpen. It's cost them a ton of games. It has hurt their record, and it's not something that is just easily going to be fixed. So I do think they're going to have to go outside the organization and make some kind of move. Now, the question is, how quickly do you want to make a move like that? How quickly are other teams receptive to a move like that? And to what degree does that move look like? And I know Cody's talked about this on social media, I think on the shows as well. Like, the big name, of course, right now is Mason Miller on the Athletics. He's nasty, sitting 102, just mowing guys down. Are you comfortable paying the price for what that's going to cost? And I think for a lot of people, the answer would be no. I'm not a big speculate on what a trade package would be because I truly don't know, and I just don't like making stuff up. But my guess is that if you found out what that price is right now, you wouldn't be interested, or it would at least really scare you to give up some of those names. I know the guys will probably talk tomorrow about the Cubs having 8 guys in MLB Pipeline's updated top 100 prospects list. Kiss a few of them goodbye if you want a young reliever that is doing what someone like Miller's doing. Now there's different levels. You can get a lesser reliever, a veteran type thing for a cheaper cost. And the Cubs do have a lot of prospects that they don't have playing time for. I see, people talking about Alexander Canario in the chat, a guy like Matt Mervis, what his value is after struggling at the major league level, but he's pumping home runs in AAA every time he goes
we have
down there.
precedents for the value of those guys. They equal Jose Cuas, either in the form of 3 years on a project or 1 year with some volatility in recent years. So do you want another Jose Cuas on this roster if you trade Canario?
No.
It does not do it for us.
No.
We need surefire relief help.
Yeah. And I don't even necessarily think the best way for this team to be successful is a lockdown closer. Like we all just know that. You
for
move
most teams.
Well, of course. Well, some teams have them, so they're blessed with having them. If you can move everybody down a rung so that Leiter is not the person everybody's first answer is he should be the closer, or just move everybody down an inning, everything looks a lot brighter. But is that the level Jed decides to go? I don't necessarily think that's what they have to acquire in terms of it has to be a tip-top tier lockdown closer. They just need reliable bullpen arms. Right now, they do not have enough of those. And we saw it last year. They got as far as they could with basically 3, ALLCITY, Merriweather, and Leiter.
Well,
Those guys broke down.
If you don't, they need a surefire closer with this bullpen. If it depends what your expectations are, but if you enter a playoff series and you lack Merriweather, ALLCITY, and
Yeah.
Neris in a high confident role, then you're going to need an Aroldis Chapman equivalent, as they did in 2016, to
Yeah.
carry the entire
No,
boat.
you're right. All right, I
They
take it
need
back.
that.
They need that.
But if Merriweather comes back healthy, which is not a certainty whatsoever,
Sure.
and Neris stabilizes, then of course the question then becomes,
Yeah.
well, how much do you want to give up for one of those guys?
Yeah. I guess I was thinking in terms of just trying to win this division and keep things going
Right. It
with how
depends
they're
what your
going.
expectation is.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's fair. So, like I said, it's a question of Jed was on. It was either Marquee or 670 The Score and talking about like, yeah, they've been on the phone with the Marlins. Like he's open about the fact that they are looking at this. They are aware that the bullpen is bad.
Is it still the 6th inning for Jed Hoyer in his
In his off
timeline?
season, I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah,
Does
I
the
don't know.
timeline still make sense for trading you, Darvish? I'm just kind of curious where we are in the whole timeline for
Well,
Jed.
okay, we're already over
Yeah.
an hour. We don't have time to get on a whole thing like
I'll
that.
do it.
But
No, I will.
I think again, it's clear what the issue is, and it's on Jed to solve it because I think you can get healthy and you can have some guys stabilize, but it's very clear that this bullpen is the issue. It's going to continue to be an issue. And at least in the interim, it's going to be tough for Craig Counsell to
Yeah.
not piss us all off because there's just not a lot of good options on each given day.
I
And,
I
go ahead. Go ahead.
I will say though, with all the issues, including Neris and his 8 per 9 walk rate, somehow it hasn't killed the team
Yeah.
dramatically. And there I was trying to figure out why is Neris getting these opportunities? And what I came away with Neris is yes, he's creating these heart attack environments, bases loaded walks. He's such a weird pitcher in that he shows flashes of brilliance, the brilliance with the splitter. And so in one way, he's walking the bases loaded, and all of a sudden, he rips off 2 splitters that look better than Yamamoto's splitters, and he gets the out. And Craig was interviewed after Sunday's game, and he basically said that. He said, forgot exactly what he used for the phrase, but he expressed that the stress was high, but he just locks down when he needs to lock down. And it's not sustainable, don't get me wrong, but to some degree, I respect Craig for giving Neris those opportunities when everyone else in the pen is clearly not showing it. Because if this were me, I would never give a guy with an 8 per 9 walk rate closing chances. He'd be least on my priority list, and he's the guy getting those
Yeah.
saves in dramatic fashion.
Well, and I do think, it's similar to not exactly similar. It's not apples to apples, but similar in what I said about Alzolay, where it's like Hector Neris has a track record of this. He's always been a guy that's walked some guys. It's he's not someone that's never had high walk totals. But as recently as last year, he was a very solid reliever for a good Houston Astros team. And so while the numbers don't look good and are like, I don't know if this is sustainable, et cetera, he's got the track record and you have got to see if you can get him back to that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not that easy. And, better than me. There's all sorts of intricacies that can go wrong with a pitcher or things that are tough to fix, et cetera, et cetera. But this isn't someone who was good 4 years ago. This is someone who was a very solid reliever last year
It's very
in a pennant
similar
race.
it's very similar to our Hendricks discussion. They were both really good last year, and they both have stuff that looks the same as last year.
Yeah, and if you
So
can
what
figure it
gives?
out and get it stabilized, it would be quite valuable, to figure that out. So and of course, lacking better options, you're gonna try to get the things that might work to work again. That's
And
gonna be your best path forward.
that environment with Neris in the 9th inning, that's the environment where he needs to adjust to. And so if he needs to improve his command, then wins and losses aside, put him in the highest stress environment to
Yeah.
lock in those adjustments as we always
Yeah.
talk about.
Well, and also before I know we have we're over an hour, so we have one more quick ad break for you. But I am
You want
seeing
to go
some
through? You want
question
to go
of
3 hours tonight?
no, but I'm seeing some question of, it's not the first time in the chat of Ian Happ leaving the game today. I unless I missed something, he just got pinch ran for. It was late in the game.
Listen,
PCA is a faster and a better base runner, so
don't
I think
put
that's
that
it.
thought in my mind. I don't want to think about that right now with Ian Happ
No,
being
I mean
injured.
he was high fiving in the dugout. Like I said, unless I missed something, it was just because
Well,
PCA is fast. That was it.
listen, with this
So
medical staff, you never know. I really don't know.
I will never understand that. I really won't.
I don't get it. I don't like. I really don't understand this.
Because
I
it's
need.
similar to the Ben Zobrist thing in that Dansby looked awful at the plate. He was making weird errors in the field.
This is
Like
not the
it's
first
not like
time.
he was gutting it out and putting up a 950 OPS, and then
It's
it's like, oh yeah, he
this.
was doing it hurt.
It's
He
the
looked
same
terrible.
thing with like Jason Hayward in 2016 or 2017. He's like hitting with a sore wrist for 3 months, and like, of course, the numbers look like that.
Very strange. Yeah,
Don't get
I
it.
just when you're hurt, just go on the IL for 10 days. It's
I
not
would
that big a
love
deal.
like a 5-hour interview with like the Cubs like physicians, just so I can understand it. I'm just asking for for
Well, and
knowledge,
I would
'cause I'm
also
an idiot.
wonder what Dansby was telling them because he
I get
seems like
it.
the guy who wants to be out there.
I
Yeah,
get it, but he did a medical professional's job to figure this stuff out. Just
yeah.
saying. All right, let me just add a break here. We'll come back around. I don't know how long you want to go today, but whatever. Um, I got nothing to do. Make Ray Chevrolet your first draft pick for your new Chevy this May. Visit our partner to shop their Memorial Day sales event on going on all month long at Ray Chevy in Route 12 in Fox Lake and at raychevrolet.com. As one of the top selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventory. Plus, you can find the perfect tailgate vehicle right now. Get $10,000 off MSRP on new 2024 Chevrolet Silverados or leased a new 2024 Chevy Trax for only $199 a month for 36 months. Or celebrate Memorial Day your way and shop over 125 of their vehicles priced under $20,000. And if you've heard of Ray Chevrolet, then you've also heard of Ray's Price Promise. They're guaranteed to make your next vehicle more affordable than ever with no price changing. No add-ons and no hidden fees ever. That means the incredible prices we're talking about now, you can expect to see them on the very same day when you shop Ray Chevy in store or online. Shop the Memorial Day sales event all month long by visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive.
All right, Brendan. Tough series coming up with the Atlanta Braves. That's always somewhat of a measuring stick at this point in our journey here. So that'll be interesting. And obviously, Shota has shown us a lot, but this is going to be a tough test for him. So this is be interesting. It's an interesting series. And the Cubs have played a lot of close games. They played a lot of games where maybe you feel like they've let one slip or they've stolen one. Always interesting to kind of compare that to a team that's, been one of the classes of the league for the last several years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm kind of dialing in on too what they do with PCA with Saya and Bellinger back. So I'd like for them to uh maximize Saya and Bellinger when they're healthy, but at the same time, like I gotta say, I'm kind of curious about PCA's development. We were talking before he was called up. I expressed concerns about PCA's offense. I expressed concerns given that the power and the whiff rate wasn't quite there, whiffing too much, power just not obviously there. He's striking out at an 18% rate. He's making 80% contact, well above what we saw in AAA this season when he was making 73% contact. So the question I have is, why is this happening? And two, I want to see more of this. If he continues to showcase these disciplined at bats, making contact, getting even base hits and extra innings against the Pirates, I'm starting to think, okay, PCA in center field more. And then you put Bellinger first base, shore up that defense. And at the same time, Bush has been struggling. I don't know what to make of it. More whiffs, power going down. Is an adjustment period? I have no idea. But if you want to promote growth for PCA, kind of makes sense to put Bellinger at first base for the short going and see where you go with that development, because that is one of those extremes we're talking about. PCA outproducing his projection and at the same time giving Bush a little bit more of a pillow to adjust with something that he might need to go through right now. And by September, then you have your optimal roster.
Yeah, when I like, again, similar to other things, I like the flexibility. I think,
Big time.
being able to have two guys who are very good defenders in center field that you can decide who you want out there, letting Cody get off his legs at least a little bit at first base, using the
It
DH
makes a
as
lot of sense. It really
yeah, it's just
does.
nice to have that flexibility, and, of course, there's different reasons you would, rotate those guys and things like that, but I like the flexibility, and then again, as you saw on Sunday, being able to come in and pinch run and know that you have a guy that can cause chaos on the base paths, is always good, as we learned through the years with one Javi Baez. Not that PCA has to prove that he can be the base runner that Javi was, but chaos causers can be good, as long as they know how to pick their moments, which Javi was somewhat of an expert at. So looking through the notes, I know our guy Ryan Herrera tweeted this out earlier this afternoon. It will be Shota on Monday, Jamison Tyone on Tuesday, and then we have a big fat TBD on Wednesday for the Atlanta series. So we'll see how that shakes out. Maybe that's a Hayden Wisniewski start. Who knows? We'll see how they decide to go about that. Like I said, big test for Shota Imanaga. It's a very good offense, an offense that has a lot of power. I'm going to hit a lot of fly balls and can do some damage. And hopefully Tyone is not feeling worse for wear with that back thing. He has looked really good so far this year, and has given the Cubs what they need in terms of just quality starts, not starts that are destroying the bullpen and stuff. So hopefully they are able to keep that up. And we'll see what the Cubs decide to do in that Wednesday start. But tough series, and then you're back at home for a little bit. So try to wrap up this little road trip successfully, and then you have a nice little homestand where we'll see the Braves again. So get used to seeing these Braves. You see them twice over the next 3 series for the Cubs, the 13th through the 15th in Atlanta here, and then the 21st through the 23rd at beautiful, historic Wrigley Field. So a lot of the Atlanta Braves. I personally am fine getting these games out of the way in May versus September, like we saw last year. Let's be done with the Atlanta Braves and move on with our
You
lives.
don't like 10th inning ceremonies at second base?
No,
Not your thing?
no, I
Okay.
don't.
Just
Yeah,
checking.
don't get Cody riled up in the chat again
Just checking.
about
Just
that.
checking. Just checking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish Dansby was healthy. It would have been some good drama. Um, Sucks too that he got injured. We didn't talk about it, but I thought he was on the cusp of getting out of his funk. The reason for that was because the whiffs in that first graph I showed going way down. So he was clearly making more contact just before the injury, and his exit velocity was going up. So you saw this like normalization. And typically when we see that, that's where some offensive bursts start to happen. You saw that with Cody Bellinger prior to injury, and then he came back to my surprise fast and just never lost a beat. So that was good to see. My hope is Dansby does the same, comes back after these 10 days, knee is feeling better, and he continues to make those adjustments and provide that offensive value because this team does need it. They need Dansby's bat to be what it was last year, league average, slightly above
Yeah.
league average with that top tier defense.
Yeah, and hopefully this weekend, sort of spurs a little something in Ian Happ. It's been a slow start to the season, but
I will
Pittsburgh,
say I'm concerned about Hap. I mean, this is like we haven't seen this type of like weird like extreme from him since like 2021, where the
that's
whiffs are
that
going.
almost is part of. I'm not super worried about it. I feel like
That's
he's
fair.
been a pretty consistent hitter, and kind of finds his way out of these funks. But like I said, hopefully hitting in Pittsburgh. Did you know he's from there?
I didn't know
Have you
that
ever heard that
from
before?
Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, that's my
Okay.
favorite trivia tidbit.
Yeah, I
Nobody
had no
knows
idea.
that. Yeah,
I
they
had no
never
idea.
mention that or where he
His
went to
second home is
college.
actually Cincinnati, though, too.
Yeah.
So we'll say.
It's
Do you
always
think
funny.
Cincinnati Reds fans think like Ian Happ is our version of Boston Currents? You think there's like 12, 13-year-old Reds
Maybe.
fans who will look back
Yeah,
in 10 years,
probably.
be like, I hate Ian Happ?
Probably. Yeah, I think
Probably.
so.
Yeah. That makes me feel
I
good.
look, hovering around league average numbers so far. Hopefully, hitting in Pittsburgh cures what ails him, but we'll see. I mean, obviously, you need more production for me and Hap. That's just part of it. It was true, as you were saying, with Dansby. Like, those guys don't necessarily need to be the stars of the offense. I think Seiya Suzuki looks like he's picked up where he left off. He looks really good.
Really
Again,
good.
despite an offer on Sunday, he was ripping the ball the
Bellinger looks
entire game.
awesome
Cody
right
Bellinger
away.
looks really good. His numbers on the season have started to look really good. I
Morel
think
and
those
Sammy
guys can,
Sosa.
yeah, those guys can be your stars. Right, Christopher Morel, we talked about at the beginning of the show, but you need Dansby and Hap to be consistent producers. And so far on the season, they have not done that. And hopefully that turns around. But, we'll see. Also, at least for when Dansby's out, right? Like, and we're at the hour 20 mark. So I'm
Oh,
allowed to
we didn't
say,
talk about the Nico Horner saved game today, did we? The
yes,
diving
that's a
stop.
great point. I saw
Yeah,
some people talking about that on Twitter today. That diving stop that he made to hold the runner at third is the only reason that
spectacular.
the Cubs win this game
Yep.
on Sunday.
The
Nico
only reason
Horner,
why.
Nico Horner back at short, which is a position he hasn't
Stop
played.
Nico Horner.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
So don't forget that. That was a great play. I mean, really just a phenomenal play by
And
Nico
he looked
Horner.
great offensively too. A lot of concerns early on. He's normalized. Looking like the
Yes.
same guy we saw
But
last year.
so I was going to say, we're at the hour 20 mark. I feel like I'm allowed to say things that can't really be held against me. It's just like free time,
Is this like the
We're
Nick
like,
Madrigal slander
well,
hour? Is that what it
maybe.
is?
So what I
Oh,
was
okay.
going to
Sick.
say is, how crazy of a suggestion is it that Cody Bellinger plays first base, Michael Busch plays second base, where he's played before, and you can DH whoever you want, put
Now we're
PCA in
talking.
center,
Now we're
DH
talking.
Patrick Wisdom, and then we don't have to see either of Nick Madrigal or Miles Mastrobuoni.
See, this is why you don't give yourself enough credit, because you're a former uh, major league organization manager. You were in a dugout making the decisions. You promoted Jose Leclerc, World Series champion. This is
Right.
what I'm talking about. That thought never came to my brain. I'm all about that. Put Michael Busch at second base. Use him like Max Muncy when he was with the Dodgers playing second base. Put Wisdom as DH. I'm here for it. Put PCA in center field. I love it. Great idea.
I just am not. I'm not into it, you guys.
Why do you think?
I
But
think
realistically,
Mastrobuoni, I will say about this, like, Mastrobuoni has shown spurts where, like, the batted ball stuff is pretty good. Like, he put some good swings on the ball, but of course, like, you're looking at, like, the totality of his work, and it has not been a good season. He's been sub-replacement level. He's got a 42 WRC plus. So it's tough to make that argument. But at times, I think he looks like a useful bat. And I've said before that Madrigal's ability to make contact plays a role. On this team, though, it just doesn't right now. They don't have the power to make that a valuable skill. And even if it were that, I think a lot of people get way too twisted in this like hypothetical version of Nick Madrigal that is a 310 hitter and he's this big contact guy. He's
yeah.
got a 49 WRC plus, guys. His OPS is like 506. That's horrible. I sometimes I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when all I do is tweet his numbers, his real statistics, and I get yelled at. He's a fine bench player. He's this, he's that. He literally has not been this year.
Oh,
He's a sub
poor
replacement
Corey
level.
getting
Negative.
yelled at. Getting yelled at. What are we gonna do? The chat's yelling at me right now. I get it. I get it. Everyone needs to vent a little
And
bit.
look,
But
at this point, they're dealing with injuries. You're playing with what you got. I understand these things. It's fine. And I've given
yeah,
Nick Madrigal credit a ton for the work that he's done on defense. I will point out, though, that he's not rating well on defense. If you're into the defensive metrics this year at third base, they are not being as kind to him. And I think you
to be
saw,
fair, the counter to that is Nico Horner's outs above average is in the 4th percentile. So it's early for those metrics. And
sure.
I agree with you. And I will
Yeah.
say too, defensively, I thought Madrigal has actually looked fine at third base defensively.
Yeah.
If you've
Me too.
noticed, Corey, if you've noticed today at third base, he was playing very far back.
Yeah.
And where Nico had to come in, field that grounder, Madrigal was way far back. So I
Yeah.
actually do give him credit there.
So
Even
do
though
I. I've given him
I would
credit all the time.
yeah, even though I would release Madrigal right now if I had the opportunity to, but I'll recognize that he's looked better defensively at third base this year. I
Yeah.
will say that.
So Tyler says, remember that Morel has played second base. Maybe Morel at second, Wisdom at third, but
Well, I would
Wisdom's
like
defense at third
I would
was
like
not
the
good
Morel to
last year.
continue to get reps.
Yeah, that's true. That's
I
true.
think
No, you're
Tyler
right
does
about that.
not like me. It's okay, Tyler. I like you. It's a cool name. I'm just trying my best talking Cubs baseball over here, but I understand like the depth in the infield. Of course, Madrigal is not doing it. Mastroboni's not doing it. What I like about the depth, I like the ability for them to use Wisdom at first base and Wisdom at third base if they need to. And to your point, they can move over Nico from second base to shortstop. They can move over Bush from third base to first base if they need to. And they have guys in AAA right now. Luis Vasquez is a very
Yeah.
competent defender if they need, and they have flexibility in the infield.
So you've probably seen a lot of chatter about Luis Vasquez, and I think part of the reason that you've seen that is, I think he's earned the opportunity. He's taken real strides on offense. I think previously was thought of as a prospect that was primarily a defense-only guy, and has really taken some strides there. He's put up some good numbers so far this year. So he's one of those players. Like our friend Gary, who is a big fan of Jake Slaughter, who, they're guys that maybe have earned the shot when you're trying to figure out what the best option is. Maybe it's worth, like rewarding those guys for the work and the success. I think the reason that I would like to see him is that you just know you're going to get a really good defensive player. And for as good as, again, we've given credit to Madrigal for the work that he's done at third base. And, he's fine at second base as well, where they're, defensively as they're playing him, recently. Mastroboni's fine. Wisdom occasionally looks good at third base, but then muffs like really simple plays sometimes. So he's hit or miss. I think when you're going through options like that, I would rather just see a guy where it's like, no, just make the defense way better. Just have really good defenders at the positions while you can, and see if he can hit a little bit for you. The other guys aren't, so see what happens.
With Vasquez too, it's that and plus power potential. This is someone who's exceeded his power expectations in the same way that we saw the recent guys like Morel exceed power expectations, different degrees, of course, but Vasquez was never imagined as a guy who could hit 20 plus home runs. And he's likely not going to do that at the big league level. That's insane to think. But he's one of those guys that if he plays well defensively and sparing time and occasionally runs into one, all I'm asking for is slightly above replacement level. I'm not asking for league average value. I'm asking for 0.5 WAR. I'm just asking for not negative WAR or zero WAR. I'm just give me some value is all I'm asking. And right now, Magical is not providing that, nor is Mastroboni. I think the ideas with them, which I understand, is if we're having the discussion of Vasquez and Slaughter versus Magical and Mastroboni making a difference, then it's we got bigger problems.
It's tough.
It's likely insignificant in the grand scheme of this season, but as a fan, I would like to see the biggest extreme. But I do understand why they're using Mastroboni and Magical, given high contact, defensive proof at the corner for Madrigal, and Mastroboni can play across diamond. So I understand it. Just as a fan, it's kind of frustrating.
Well, and only fair. Listen, man, you and I in particular, but everybody spent a lot of time ripping on, the Trey Mancinis and Tucker Barnharts of the world because they were negative WAR players. They were below replacement level. They were harming the team, like quite literally, by their playing. And that's the territory that these two are in. I know that, I think you and I, maybe me more than anyone, have kind of developed a like, oh, they hate Nick Madrigal. They're haters, like whatever. Now I feel like, listen, argue back at me. Like, what do you got? You know what I mean? Like, and you can't use hypotheticals. You can't tell me what you think he could be or what he could do or what he did for the White Sox 4 years ago. Talk to me about what he's done for the Chicago Cubs. And for the Chicago Cubs, he's been a below league average hitter. That's it. That's what it is. And a contact bat like that plays. But when we're trying to figure out how to score runs on a consistent basis, that's not what they need right now. It just is not a skill that is the most important thing for this team right now. So that's just my feeling on it. And like I said, if we're debating hitters that have WRC pluses similar to John Lester in 2019, take it for whatever you want. And I'll also tell you, Nick Madrigal is not going to pop an opposite field home run anytime soon. All right. Johnny would. So
here we go.
There you go.
I have a question for you.
Hit me. 90 minutes. Here we are, folks.
You get one at bat. Okay. Bottom of the ninth inning, guy in third base, 2 outs. Magical or Hayward at the dish?
Which version of Hayward?
Whatever you want, I guess. You
Oh,
get
man.
flip a coin.
I don't know, dude.
You gotta pick.
Ugh.
Come on.
I
You
don't
gotta
even know if
pick. I will hold it against you too. So you can pick your answer wisely over here.
I don't know. I think in theory, like, the right
Come on,
choice
dude.
is
It's an
Madrigal,
easy
isn't it?
one. Oh, come on. Come on.
Hayward
Hayward
will
at least is
spot in
showing.
those spots, dude.
I understand that, but he's hit walk-off home runs several times for the Cubs, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
If Madrigal hits a fly ball over 250 feet, I'm off my couch. I think it's going yard
I
because
don't
I'd
know,
never
man.
see
If
that.
if I needed a rough ground ball to second base, then maybe, yeah, Jason Hayward's my man.
No,
So,
that's
yeah.
ho
Anyway, I didn't wanna you did that to me. That's not fair. I didn't
I
wanna
did, I
besmirch.
did.
I didn't need to talk about
Well,
Jason
you
Hayward.
started this podcast attaching my name to the Kyle Hendricks talk as if
Jason
I'm
Hayward
defending
is a
Hendricks over
World
here.
Series champion for the
That's
Chicago
right.
Cubs,
That's
and
right.
like David Ross, we will leave it at that.
Yep.
I think now that we've gotten to this point, we can probably wrap it up.
That's a
I
good one.
I will say, very much appreciate y'all in the live chat today. I think we had over a few hundred people here for the entire 90 minutes. Very much appreciate that. It's late on a Sunday. To any of y'all that are mothers out there listening to the show, we wish you a very happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to my mom and, of course, Brendan's mom. I know they are
Oh,
both
wow.
listening.
Yeah, she'll love
Um,
hearing that.
and hope you guys had a good weekend, however you choose to celebrate. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We appreciate you very much. I believe he said it earlier, but our guy Kevin Wells will be in with Luke and Ryan on Monday for Braves pre and post game. Cody has a much deserved day off, but I'm sure he'll be. You can hear him shouting from wherever he'll be if there are things to shout about.
You know, I
So
wish I had Kevin's voice. Kevin has a great voice.
he
He really
works in
does.
radio, so
I
yeah.
know. It's just he needs to teach me how to talk like that. I just can't talk like
I'm
Kevin.
sure he's available for lessons. Um, like I said, appreciate y'all. Thank you guys for tuning in. Brendan and I will be back with you next Sunday to talk about hopefully another successful week of Cubs baseball. And we'll end with this 90 minutes. There was a lot of positives, but a reminder, Cubs are 24-17. They have had an unprecedented in, really rivaling only certain years of number of guys on the injured list
That's for
at
sure.
this point in the season. They have weathered a ton, and they are a half game out of first place. So
That's
let's have a
right.
good series in Atlanta, and then I think the vibes will be very good this week at beautiful historic Wrigley Field. We got another outing of the 120 Club coming up this Friday. If you'd like to join Cody Braggs in the bleachers, check out all the information on our Twitter page, CHGO Cubs. It's our pin post. You can see the schedule, information, etc. All you need is your bleacher ticket and just show up to have a good time. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We will talk to you again next week. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.